Welcome to He Believes, She Feels, episode 3. I have the lovely Sarah here. She's been in her spiritual journey for over 8 years now, mentor, and she's helped so many souls all over the world. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you for
How are you
having
today?
me.
I know.
Um, so yes, I'm good.
Well, talk a little bit about to the audience about who you are, your journey, and how you got to where you are now, and then we can go from there.
Sure. How long have you got? I'm around. I've been 40 years of, what I can show you. Actually, Rafa, it's been a wild ride, actually, and some of the topics that I might talk to you about may be triggering or sensitive to the audience. So I just wanted to really be open and honest with you about that, and the viewers, of course. So, a bit about my journey is I started with fell pregnant, and I wasn't married. And my father, I come from a culture where my father, it's his way or the highway, very Arabic tradition. You need to be married before you can have a child. So I was really brought up into a foundation where I couldn't be myself, or I couldn't show up in an environment to be myself in terms of keeping the child. Because I wanted to keep the child, I had to listen to my father and be condemned to his word. So this left me feeling really unworthy of his love, and of any person's love, right? So I had to terminate the baby, and not by my will, by my father's will. Otherwise, I wouldn't be accepted in the family home. And this was really, really hard for me. So um, I terminated, and then I didn't feel worthy within myself. And what I noticed was that I then turned to a lot of drugs and alcohol. Um, and I'm not obviously proud about what I did, but it taught me to just kind of hide my emotions, because I didn't know how to face my emotions. And I went out lots of times, drinking on the weekend or taking drugs, just so I could find, like peace within my headspace of what I had done previously by terminating the baby. So this then also led me to self-sabotaging behaviors and understanding um, who I was, basically. And by a couple of years later, I had hit rock bottom and almost lost my life with drugs and alcohol with an overdose. And that's when I was like, okay, something's got to give. I don't want this for my life anymore. And this is when I turned to my spirituality journey, and had a bit of an understanding of who Sarah is and how I wanted to show up in the world. So there was a lot of facing and transmuting, and wanting to understand the different patterns and behaviors that showed up for me in terms of why I was hurting myself the way it did. Now, that came up through self-love. Like, I would not love myself. Let's be realistic, right? So when you have a father issue and you put it upon yourself, it's like an abandonment wound. It's like there is an abandonment wound, right? There is a rejection wound. And these rejection wounds and abandonment wounds comes from people that obviously we're supposed to be our role models or our guidance, the people that are supposed to love us, and they're the ones that hurt us the most. So these issues come up within oneself in terms of how to, like, I would literally judge myself first before I would allow anyone coming into my life, or I would put myself down and, be around my friends and, like, let me do this and let me do that and let me babysit your child, let me do this. And it constantly people pleasing around me. And I wasn't understanding of that, because I was just like, I want to be accepted. I want to feel love. I don't want to feel rejected. Um, and that was just me, like, not really understanding who Sarah was as a person, right? So when I had hit rock bottom with the drugs and the alcohol, I had to sit with myself and go, okay, what is it that I want and how do I want to change that? So this became a catalyst of my growth, right? Like in terms of who is Sarah? Who is Sarah? And what does Sarah want? And where does Sarah want to be in the next 5 years? So I think this helped me to really understand what it is that I want. And a lot of things that came up for me was I want love, but I want love to myself. I don't want to be chasing love. I want to be able to see my truth and my sensitivity and my light and, love me for me, right? And be able to speak my truth without being, reprimanded that I can't speak my truth. And when I was growing up, I always knew that I was different, right? Like completely different to my siblings, completely different to my cousins, the people that I went to school with, university, like completely different kettle of fish. And then I understood that I was like, okay, I'm actually here to to change myself and love myself wholeheartedly, even if it means I'm sensitive, right? Like, because I'm a sensitive person. So, yeah, I'm sensitive. I'm so sensitive. There's so many people out there that don't know that they're sensitive, and it's okay to be sensitive, right? It's our superpower, if anything, is sensitivity.
It is. So it sounds like what a lot of us experience in the spiritual community. Like you go through a traumatic event, you go through this experience of like so much sabotage, so much like I went through the same like alcohol, drugs, whatever it might be, and then you get to a point that you ask that question of who am I, like you did, and you came into this journey. Now, and thank you for sharing that, by the way. That requires a lot of vulnerability. So now you have a lot of clients that come to you all over the world. So my question is, what they come seeking? What is like the main thing that they usually come to you to try to help themselves better, self-love? What are some of those things?
Well, a lot of the things is the self-love, their intuition, not trusting their own intuition, their own guidance, and the belief systems that come around it, right? Like we all have these certain belief systems that are holding us back. And if we're not willing to face them and go, oh my God, that's actually a limiting belief, that is actually not true, it is an assumption made up by ourselves, how can we change that? So it's just giving, I guess, the people the tools to be aware of it, right? Like, because when we're on our self-development journey and our personal development journey, it comes down to perspective. It comes down to awareness. It comes down to how do we unlearn everything that we've been taught through ancestral lineage, through cultural conditionings, through societal conditionings, and how can we unlearn it all so we can relearn it in a healthy way that's not going to hurt us?
The question of the lifetime, right? Let's go down that rabbit hole. Like, how do we do that? How do we start?
Yeah, and honestly, it comes down to like being kind to ourselves. Like something so easy, right? Like, but it's so hard. Like, because we've been so heavily taught, even, as a female myself, I've been taught that I need to be a receiver and surrender and be in that feminine nurturing state. And all my life, I've only been in survival, in masculine energy, doing action, doing, and trying to, have those codependency behaviors to latch onto a man. It's like, no, well, you don't actually need to do that, do you? You just need to love yourself, speak your truth, raise your frequency. Yes, nurture yourself as a feminine. Do you know what I mean? But you need to have that balance. Like, that's all it comes down to. When you balance your masculine energy and your feminine energy, you are then in total alignment to where you want to be, right? And that comes down to intimacy, vulnerability, transparency, integrity. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But the balance is the key though, right? So how do we balance? How do we balance? Because I struggle with that on a daily basis.
Same. So I don't struggle too much now, but what I've been noticing is like I work full time, for instance, to give you an idea. And and that's very much my masculine, you know. And then I've got as well this part-time job, which is my passion. It's my, you know, my link to help other people grow and evolve. And I love it, right? And I look at that as like a bit of my feminine, you know. So my full-time job is my masculine. Part-time job is what I'm currently doing, which is my passion project through I Am Sacred Oracle, helping and showing people, beautiful souls, how to experience their own authenticity. And that's my balance of like bringing them the two, bringing into two in total alignment, you know what I mean, in terms of the balance between the masculine and the feminine energies. And I'm hoping that, you know, later on, like I can get rid of my full-time job altogether and make this my full-time job, you know, like I think that's one of my big goals that I have to really branch and hold that space for so many more other people out there.
What does it look like for you in the sense of, like you said, that the balance, the feminine, the masculine, like what are some of the tools you use on a daily or weekly basis that you think some people can take away in terms of helping them balance?
Yeah, look, in terms of the balance and helping, I would definitely journal, meditate if you can, ground your energies, go to the gym. Oh my goodness. I never thought I'd actually say this, but
I know.
exercise has been a game changer for me.
This is recorded, so this is going to be forever, ever embedded in this.
Yeah, definitely. Go to the gym, exercise. Like, for me, that's helped me balance my masculine and also my feminine, because my feminine's all about being in the present moment and being creative, and surrendering and trusting the universe, you know, and trusting God. So, um, being in that masculine side of things as well is for me to ground. Grounding is very masculine, you know, going to the gym, very masculine. And also just applying the action within limits. Don't go overboard. Like the masculine is action, the doer, the protective, you know what I mean? So you can do the masculine, which is the action, action, action. Just do it with balance. Like just don't go overboard. Don't run yourself into a workaholic, you know, way, I guess. You know what I mean? Like
Are you talking
just
directly to me or
yourself.
the audience? Because I feel
Oh,
like
the
both of
audience, right?
yeah, I feel like both of these
Both,
messages.
both.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think we mentioned it before. Like, also, 50% of everything is awareness, right? Like
Yeah,
being aware that you're going overboard or being aware you're taking less action in a certain place. Talk a little bit about that.
absolutely. So a lot of my journey came up for me. So I was doing like a couple of courses to help me on my journey, and I did timeline therapy, theta healing, NLP therapy, and then obviously different other modalities like energy activations and compassion keys. And through these different modalities that I learned was literally awareness. So we need to be aware of what we're doing. So we need to be aware of the beliefs or the thoughts or the programs that we're actually telling ourselves. So for instance, I just give you an example of this. I'm broke, right? Like when you're constantly using this word or this method, I'm broke, you're only going to keep manifesting I'm broke into your life, right? But if you change the words and say, oh, sorry, I can't spend that money at the moment because I'm allocating my money elsewhere, you're actually saying, I've still got money coming through, but it's not sharing with the universe that
Yeah.
I'm manifesting I'm a broke bitch, for instance, to give you an example, right? So these are different ways and methods on how we communicate with ourselves, and also what thought processes and patterns are shifted into beliefs. Or, for instance, I'm not worthy of love. That's a belief system, right? That we've inherited from our daddy wounds, right? I've got big father wounds when that comes to me with my father. And the wounds that have come up from that, especially through abandoning a child of my own, that has left me feeling like I'm not worthy to be a mum, or I'm not worthy to be a wife. And that's been a huge limiting belief that I've had to get rid of transmute literally into a different reframe of a belief, which is I am worthy and I am mother and I am wife, you know? So that when people come to me, I'm just literally giving them the same tools that helps me, which is constant awareness, shifting those behaviors and those patterns that we all have, right, into the behaviors and reframing and reprogramming ourselves to be constant reminders
Yeah.
that we are changing. We are an evolution of spiritual development, right? And that comes down to changing and shifting the beliefs and then the patterns that come with that.
That,
So we
that,
can't be hard on ourselves. Do you know what I mean? Like we need to really be kind to ourselves and
yeah.
show ourselves compassion through this ordeal.
Now you said something very interesting. I want to circle back because this has been on the top of my mind lately, and I've noticed it with myself as well. That
Sure.
people around me have been different in a way. Like even with my own mother, she's been adapting to what we're talking about. Other people has been adapting to it, and you talked about timeline therapy.
Sorry, timeline. Yeah.
Yeah. So I elaborate on timeline therapy and the and theta therapy as well. But I do feel like we're evoluting our like consciousness into different timelines, and I'm starting to see patterns
Absolutely.
of different people reacting differently that before could have been different. If that makes
Yeah,
sense.
absolutely. Because okay, look, so if you go back to a timeline where you experience some trauma, you are obviously going to be very reactive based on that trauma. And if
Hmm.
when you shift to a different timeline where you are no longer reactive but responsive, then
Yeah.
you can see the growth in between from that initial trauma to where you are now. So I'm going to give you an example of this. So about 15 years ago when this all happened in terms of the trauma with my father, I was very reactive, right? Like didn't want to have a bar of you, would blame you, shame you, disrespect myself, and push you aside. You know, that was very much me trying to understand who I was at that time because I was so hurt. So I didn't know how to show my hurt. I didn't know how to show my vulnerability. All I knew was, I'm just going to blame you and run away. Like that was how I responded or reacted to it because I didn't know how to be vulnerable and show that authenticity through my truth, right? And once you step into timeline therapy and you go back to, and like timeline therapy helped me so much because I was able to go back to that trauma and do it differently. So I was able to, and even before them as well, like go back to that teenage Sarah, sorry, not teenage Sarah, young adult Sarah, you know, and talk to her, you know, like it's safe, you're okay, you're held, you know. And how I did this was I did this through the mirror. Like, would you believe
Yeah.
it? Mirror. I was like, mirror, what the? But mirror helped me so much in terms of therapy. So I was able to even talk to my 5-year-old mini Sarah, you know, and say, hi, mini Sarah, I'm really sorry I didn't treat you well. I'm really, really sorry that I didn't hold that space for you. I love you so much. Let's change the trajectory of our future. You know what I
That
mean?
that seems like a lot of people that I've come on here and a lot of people that I talk to, even myself included, have been mirror work. Like the
Yeah,
hacking of the subconscious, looking yourself in the mirror and bypassing your actual brain to your
absolutely.
programming seems to be key to like letting go of a lot of trauma. Um,
Absolutely.
but you
Yeah.
said something I want to piggyback on, which is you said you were your most authentic self
Yes.
in your timeline. Can we talk about that? Talk about authenticity? I feel like
Yeah,
that's an important subject
absolutely.
about everything.
Yeah, exactly, right? So, authenticity, what is it, right? Like, what is it? So, basically, for me, it's being able to show my true self without feeling like I'm being judged or I'm judging myself, right? It's what I feel like on the inside is what I show on the outside. It's in total alignment because it's my vulnerability, it's my sensitivity, it's my peace, it's my quirkiness, it's my honesty, it's my raw honesty. And honestly, when you are in total alignment with your authenticity and you know who you are and what you do and where you're going, your authenticity will shine. It is your, honestly, it is your birthright, and it is your bright light, literally. Once you do step into your authenticity and really own it, like you really got to own it, like take it on board and go, you know what, this is who I am. And I struggled with this a lot previously, because I was always trying to fit in. This is a big one, like I was always my whole life trying to fit in, literally, from when I was 5 years old with my siblings to going to school, to going to university, like all of it, you're just trying to belong. And then if my parents actually knew how to handle or to structure or to support me, I wouldn't need to feel like I was an outsider, right? Like literally an outcast in everything that I did, until I started doing the learning and getting the tools and understanding who Sarah is and loving myself unconditionally, regardless of the situations around me or what other people thought of me, or, if people were putting me down and judging me, or if I was judging myself, or if my family was judging me. That was the biggest one for me, was my family, through the cultural conditionings, is judgment, right?
Yeah.
So what I had to learn was I had to release these judgments that I had on myself. I had to release these these fears around rejection and around abandonment, and really let go and see how I could bring that in for myself. That means acceptance for myself. No more judging Sarah. That means accept you for you, you know?
Yeah.
If you're going to feel rejection, it was purely because you are people pleasing other people. Stop. What is that helping? What is that serving another? If you don't want to do something, say no. Hold your
Yeah.
boundaries in place.
Yeah. You were
Sometimes
definitely protecting.
it is
You're
honestly really hard for a lot of people to go, you know what? I actually don't want to do that, but I want to keep the peace. A lot of people, I fell under this. I'm
still
the
do.
first hand. Still people do.
People
This is
still do.
why, when you are a mentor or a coach like myself and like yourself, we can give these beautiful souls the tools on how to better themselves without people pleasing. They don't have to people
Yeah.
please. And
I
that's
thought
part
about
of our self-love, right?
Yeah, and that's what I thought
That's
about
all part of our
before.
authenticity.
Yeah, the previous Raphaels, the even though Beast one and all these versions are all people pleasing. It was all like, yes, I'll do this, but I didn't want, and it was all protection of like my little mini Raphael, if you want to call it. I'm sure
Perfect.
you were
Yeah,
protecting mini Sarah in
absolutely.
that way too, right? Our inner child.
Absolutely. Yeah,
It-
and then mini Sarah just wanted to feel safe and held, right? So like, how do we make mini Sarah feel safe and held? But unfortunately, I went through, mini Sarah went through, these big trials and tribulations of codependency and people pleasing and judging myself, that I was like, oh, I've had enough.
yeah,
Like, what do I do to change this? I want to show up in the world where I'm showing up for me, where I can love me wholeheartedly and show that even if you don't like me, bye bye, it's fine. You don't have to like me. Do you know what I mean? Because there's lots of people that go, oh, but I need you to like me. I need you to like me. And I was one of those people. And to step out of it and go, actually, I don't really care if you like me or you don't like me. Like, that in myself was so liberating. It was freeing. It was freedom. It was like, oh, okay, I don't
yeah,
actually need to be like this, like I don't actually need to feel like I have to people
worthless almost.
please.
Yeah,
Yeah, like I don't want to do this anymore. And when I literally broke down and I prayed to God, and I literally was like, I want more to life than this for me. Like, and I think that's what was really the catalyst of my journey, was the self-love aspect, because I had self-sabotaged, self-abandoned, self-neglected, self-judged so much, because I was putting on this mask. Like I was so egotistic. I was putting on this mask because I just wanted to be loved by my dad.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all
What
I
what
wanted.
dad? That's all I was like, oh.
Like it's so true, and it's like so now you start to see you're like okay, and mind you, once you like start to learn the different behaviors, and then the self-sacrifice and like what you need to like let go of, and these limiting beliefs and these values, and your values change all the time, right? You start to go, okay, well, I can't actually blame my dad.
Yeah.
I did this to myself. It was a choice. It was a choice that I made. Like I need to take responsibility for this, and I need to change that and shift that for myself so I can be a legacy for my children.
And I
And
think
that's
that's
what,
probably the number one thing that people struggle with, right? Is looking in the mirror, admitting to
yeah,
their feelings, going deep within them of why they made those choices, and then
absolutely.
confronting those demons that are associated, because the ego is there, but the ego protects us. It's meant to
Yeah,
protect us.
it does, but it can also be a detriment. You need to like figure out what the ego is to you and why is it showing up for you. Like
Yep.
is it showing up in the way, yes, to protect you, but to keep you in a selfish mode, to not take responsibility, to not take accountability? And that's what I had to learn because like I'm a Gemini, right? Like, so I have a bit of, up and down emotions. Let's
Tell
say
me
that.
more.
So what I found was like my ego side was like the twin side of the Gemini, and then I had the soul side of the Gemini. Like as they're twins, right? So it was a matter of putting them in alignment and having them on both sides. You know what I mean? Because you can still be in alignment with your ego, as long as your ego is not ruling you, is not allowing you to be in that survival state,
Yeah.
right? So like if you can emerge your soul with like for instance, my passion is serving others. That is my passion. And it's been like that through all my friendships. If you look at it like from a different perspective, that's my heart. My heart is a giver. That is my personality. But if you put it into a place where you're like being taken advantage of because of people pleasing or of, ego protecting us, right? Just simple things like that. We actually fall into the trap of self sacrifice, which is, self abandoning ourselves. So we need to have that fine line. We need to understand what that fine line is and really just continuously step into our heart because our mind is our ego, our heart is our soul is our soul essence. So therefore, if we all we have to do is lean into our heart and allow the light to lead the way, oh, that comes down to authenticity, right?
It's funny you say that. Just to piggyback, and I might get some heat for this, but I feel like an unhealed Gemini is probably one of the I feel bad in a sense because I've talked
Yeah,
to an unhealed Gemini who the only time she was actually authentic to herself when she was induced by either alcohol or any kind of substance that calmed their mind down because she was so much on the fight mode, on that ego mode, and I can only
yeah,
imagine how it is on
yeah.
that
Look,
sense.
I mean, when you put it like that, 100%, but it's just awareness. So this person just needs to be aware of, like what our Gemini traits are,
Yeah.
if that makes sense, with or without alcohol. Because let's be realistic, with alcohol, it just amplifies it,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
without alcohol, it's about managing, right? What is my trigger? What is my trigger? Like for me, if I drink alcohol, my trigger is a cigarette. Do you understand? So if I'm upset and I drink alcohol, it's going to be amplified. Everybody around me is going to know what I'm upset about.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is now I don't need to have alcohol to express why I'm upset. Whereas before, a lot of people use alcohol because, oh, it's their initiative to get it out of their comfort zone and have a conversation.
It's so
And it's
crazy,
like,
isn't it?
it's so easy to do that. But hang on a
Uh-huh.
second. How about we remove alcohol from that and be okay with having those uncomfortable conversations without the alcohol?
And that's where you're spot on to that. And I like even today, I heard somebody say like, "Oh, we're gonna pregame and then we're gonna go to the bars." And then I have friends that drink so much, and I'm not shaming anybody that does drink,
Yeah.
but it just makes me think about how much is it actual the alcohol of having fun, or you're running away from your problems, and how much alcohol helped you get out of your comfort zone. But is it
Yeah,
truly
that's
helping
right.
you because it's a substance that's kind of just like opening the door for you? You need to open the door for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. But look, we need to also just be very mindful and aware of this point in the conversation. A lot of people, we can't actually tell people, hey, you got to stop drinking
Yeah.
alcohol to be on your
Yeah.
healing journey. That's not up to us, right? That's up to them.
Correct.
If they choose to be aware, again,
Mhm.
big factor, aware of what their behavior is on alcohol and off alcohol, that's on them to go, okay, yep, I'm ready for my healing journey to
Yeah.
begin. How can I start it? Where can I sign on the dotted line? You know, like if that makes sense. But if they're not willing to even see that or even open their eyes to that, honestly, there is no point in wasting your time trying to have that conversation with them. They have to make the initial steps of wanting to heal and grow for their own evolution. You know, like,
Yeah.
and that was a big player for me. You know, I didn't want to be this person anymore. I would run away from my problems. I would be so codependent on a man. You know, I would want the man to make me feel so worthy of love, so I could be in their presence. No, this is not something that I want for myself. And it's not something that I want for my children to see as
Yeah.
well. So the reason why I heal and I develop an evolution of spiritual development is for my legacy, is for my children to go, oh my God, my mom,
Hmm.
had trauma and she overcome it. And these were the tools that she had to overcome it. And now she's helping other people to heal their traumas and lift them to a higher frequency of authenticity through
I
divinity.
mean, that is the number one reason I didn't have kids. That's the number reason I don't have kids nowadays. I had so much trauma of my own, and so did you. That why
Yeah.
would I put that on my kids and be that selfish?
Absolutely. So, like, when we, but that it's not about being selfish, right? It's actually us going, we've actually changed. We've transformed. We are no longer that person. And we can put our hand up high and go, you know what? I'm proud of me. I
Yeah,
can now show this to the generations to come because we are the evolutionary people that are showing the light and the love and the way and the authenticity, to our generations to come, like, and therefore, let's face it, there is a new earth happening. You either choose love, peace,
yeah,
unity, evolve, kindness, or you drop off, right? Because you're not choosing love. God always teaches us, if you want to enter the kingdom of heaven, what you need to do is go back to children, the mindset of a child, right? So you can enter the kingdom of heaven, right? And that's all because when we're a child, we were so innocent. We didn't learn all these programs and behaviors and jealousy and patterns and like we were so pure. So God wants us to, or the divine spirit, universe, whoever you call us, wants us to unlearn everything and relearn everything in a healthy, conscious, divine, unity way to go back there. And that's what we all want, right?
yeah.
Essentially, in terms of our evolution.
That is beautifully said, because when you're talking, when you said inner child, I wrote down here at WWMICD, and when I wrote down, it was, what would my inner child do?
Yeah,
Literally, that's what I wrote down. I was like, you have to
exactly.
go back to your inner child. Like, you have to operate from that state of mind.
Absolutely. And your inner child is your, like, honestly, it's your soul.
Yeah.
It's your soul. And your soul essence is your higher self. Like, let's connect the dots. Like,
Let's connect the
seriously.
dots, shall we?
Like, seriously.
Yeah.
So, I
And
think that, the more you're aware of it, the more you understand who you are, the more that you dive deep. I mean, the shadow aspect is tough, okay? Like, it is tough. Do not lie to yourself about it. Spiritual awakening is tough. Do not lie to yourself at all. Seriously, you have to face and transmute those energies. Like, one of my biggest things was my father doesn't understand me. He doesn't even see me. He doesn't even hear me, you know? And to change that stopped me from communicating my truth. That stopped my creativity. That stopped me from just opening up and trying to express myself. That's why I had, issues with communication and I've been misunderstood for almost 40 years. You know what I mean? Like, only those that hear me and see my light and see my authenticity can really see my wisdom, right? But those that don't, it's because they were like, we all have our own drama, right, within us, about ourselves. And it comes down to self-love. Like, that's all it is. It's self-love. So the more you love yourself, the more authentic you get. But that does come with forgiveness, discernment, understanding your values, understanding your beliefs, like literally speaking the truth, but having healthy boundaries in place. Like healthy boundaries. I remember saying to my mum, oh, I really want to do this. And then she went off the Richter scale and she's like, no, you're not going to do this. And I was like, you know what? Actually, I'm an adult. I don't really need to listen to you, Mum. Like, I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm not going to have a conversation with you until, we're on the same page, because you want to, you don't like the fact that I don't have boundaries in place, like it's either your way or the highway. And she was quite shocked with that, because she was like, I've actually never heard of boundaries before. What is boundaries? It is my way or the highway. I'm your mother.
Surprise.
And it's like, actually, well, no. Yes, you might be my mother, but you're disrespecting my feelings. And my feelings is I don't feel comfortable doing what you've asked me to do. So, and then I had to then teach her that if I mean no, it means no, and this is what a boundary means. And then she started to awaken her behavior within herself, and it was like, oh my goodness, I've been a people pleaser as well. I was like, yeah, I've learned it from you. Bravo. So then, the cycle starts to begin, where we can start showing these types of different behaviors and what we can do to essentially shift it, right? Like, and to transmute it. And a big one for me was forgiveness. Like, I literally had to find multiple different modalities to forgive myself for aborting that child, forgive myself for taking drugs and alcohol, forgive myself for welcoming men into my life that disrespected me and disrespected my yoni, bringing into my life friends that took advantage of my kindness, literally, and just was like, oh, Sarah's a people pleaser, I'm going to milk her for her weakness, for her kind, beautiful heart. I had to forgive myself on so many different facets. And honestly, I still forgive myself today, because it is my number one way of me to show up as authentic as I do, and to be vulnerable, to have the power of vulnerability in terms of my integrity, and integrating that integrity through my authenticity. That's what, for me, authenticity requires me to be vulnerable. It requires me to be intimate. It requires me to be transparent, So, like, if I don't have these things, including integrity, like, I can't be authentic. I can't be me. And the beauty about it is, sensitivity is my freaking superpower. It's like, who would have thought that my sensitivity would have been my superpower? And when in my early years, I was trying to run away from my sensitivity because I didn't know who I was.
That's just the way we're taught to run away from our problems, like the disconnect from the body, mind, and soul, right?
Yeah. And it's all awareness, though, right? Like, the more you're aware, the more you can change the behavior.
Yeah.
The more you change the behavior, the more your evolution is evolving.
So it also, one point that helps me keep the balance and being authentic to myself is having some kind of routine, like you said earlier in the beginning of this podcast, was about the gym, the
Yeah,
self-love, the mirror
absolutely.
work, the journaling, the kindness. Take yourself. You know what I did yesterday? I went to watch Beetlejuice by myself because
Nice.
I was like, take yourself on a date because you're your inner child and this movie's nostalgic. You got the popcorn. I got a Diet Coke. I never drink soda. Uh,
Yeah,
and it was just like one of the most authentic things that I could have done for myself. And I felt so happy and so like motivated
liberated.
after. Yeah. And those are the little steps that some people might want to take, right? If they're
Yeah.
struggling, well, like if there was one thing they can start doing right now, what would that step be to start becoming more authentic? One little step.
Being vulnerable with yourself. Honestly, like honoring yourself. Like, even if, honestly, you're at home by yourself and you're watching the telly or you're going, you're having a shower, whatever, you're being honest with yourself. You're being vulnerable with yourself. You're like, okay, I love myself and I'm not loving myself in a cocky way. Whereas,
Yeah.
like a lot of people go, oh, I got to love myself. And it might come across as like I'm cocky. No, 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 no. I love myself, Sarah. I look myself in the mirror and I go, I love you. Today we've got the best day. My intention is this. I embody infinite love. I show up in the world. What belongs to me finds me. And that's just me
Yes.
being
Yes.
vulnerable to
Yeah.
myself in the mirror.
Yeah.
In
I
the
talk to my
mirror.
water. I talk to my water that way before I drink it.
But not only that, it helps me. And what another thing, if you guys ever are interested, I have a subliminals list as well, playlist. This has helped me rewire my brain of a nighttime. So through my subconscious. So our subconscious, we run 95% of our lives off our subconscious. The whole reason why we're raising our consciousness and getting to a 5D consciousness is because we are trying to unlearn everything, which is all these behaviors and subconscious that we've allowed ourselves to be. So overnight time, when you want to rewire your subconscious into positivity, you can do this through a playlist that I have, and I'll leave the link with you. And basically, it's like 963 hertz, or you know the frequency of unconditional love, and the frequency of enlightenment, and the frequency of God, right? The God
Yeah.
frequency, which is 963 hertz. It's a game changer. Use this when you sleep. I'm telling you, one of
I've
my
used
biggest
it
secrets.
and it does
It's
help. I've used
phenomenal.
it.
I've been doing it for at least 7 years now. It's literally changed the trajectory of my life in terms of just the thought processes, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I'm a big believer of this because of how much it's helped me on my self love journey, just my self love. Now I can, I know I can trust myself. I know I
Yeah.
love myself. I know that spirit's got my back. You know what I mean? Whereas before there was all this doubt, so much self doubt that we put on ourselves. And we're like, well, why?
Yeah.
Like, seriously, why do we do this to ourselves?
Now, as we close off here, what would you think would be the number one message to give to the audience of anybody listening to, just from a takeaway from today, or what the most important message you think?
Okay, so big important message I would say is authenticity is requires vulnerability, right? To open your heart, to step into your soul, to listen to the whispers of your heart. That is your authenticity. So authenticity is your signature, right? It is your light. It is your energy. It is what you bring into a room full of opportunities. It is you. So the best way to bring that on board is to be unapologetically you. Don't worry about what anybody thinks about you or about your truth. Bring your wisdom, bring your glow, bring your signature, and that will allow you to be in your highest frequency of authenticity. And if you need help on your journey, give me a call.
And perfect segment. How do people find you? How do people find you online?
Through I Am Sacred Oracle website, so www.iamsacredoracle.com. Please put that as a link as well below. Also, I'm on Instagram at I Am Sacred Oracle, and TikTok I Am Sacred Oracle. Not yet Facebook, but soon coming.
I appreciate you today. I appreciate you coming, being
Thank you.
vulnerable, talking to you about everything. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
this. Have
Appreciate
you
it.
again next time, and we can talk a little deeper and go into a little deeper of everything.
Yeah, that'll be wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. See ya.